military wasn't on my radar in Los Angeles. It just wasn't really talked about that much. But anyway, up at 19 years old, I ended up going to a party that I was working at Chili's, the restaurant, and our bartender would throw parties every once in a while, house parties. And so we go down there, everybody, and it's usually just a very fun, kind of uh, electric atmosphere. But this one was just very strange. It was like 10 days before Christmas. I remember Christmas was really close, but everyone was just super quiet and whispering. And it's like, what's going on here? Like everyone's whispering, there's a guy over there he's his Navy SEAL. And I've never heard of SEAL teams at all. Never heard of a Navy SEAL at 19 years old. But military was more for back then were people that needed that discipline and drive. There was no real big wars going on at the time. So it just wasn't, like I said, it wasn't on my radar. I asked like, oh, what is this SEAL thing? Like, I don't know, go ask him. So I did. I walked up to this guy at the party and he was sitting with the girl and I was like, hey, I heard you're a Navy SEAL. And he's like, yep. I said, so what do you do? I'll never forget. He said three things. He said, we jump out of planes, we dive, and we kill people. At 19 years old, I'm like, you get paid to do that. And he's like, yeah. So I said, how do I get that job? He said, go see your Navy recruiter. Very next day, go to the Navy recruiter. Like, hey, what's this Navy SEAL thing? He puts in a video. Four guys fast drove out of a helicopter on top of about a 7-story building. As they're going down each story, they're like shoot terrorists. And when they run out the bottom, they hit this clacker, the whole building blows up. And I was like, yep, I'm in. Like, let's do this.
Welcome, everybody, back to the Sean Trace Show. I am your host, Sean Trace, and I'm super excited to have an awesome guest with me today. Would you like to tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Hi, my name is Holland Romero. I have a 24-year career as a Navy SEAL, and now I am a mindset and leadership mentor. I started a company called Legacy Forged Mindset, where I help driven professionals unlock potential, become exceptional leaders that inspire peak performance, and build elite teams that execute with purpose. So that's the whole goal behind what I do, working with those high level executives, founders, CEOs, and also elite athletes. I do have a background in that. Started doing it in 2017. Did it with a company that a friend of mine started called the Charting Approach. So I do have a background, worked with pretty distinguished executives from Google, Home Depot, Mintz Levin law firm, Automatic A. So it's a pretty distinguished background, but now I started doing it on my own this year and really enjoying it. Just love being able to provide that evidence and inspiration for those driven individuals to reach that next rung on the ladder and do it successfully.
It's awesome, man. When you start working, I mean, first of all, how did you get going down this path? What was it that called you to be a Navy SEAL first and foremost? You know, where did you start?
Yeah, so that's a great story. So growing up, I grew up in Los Angeles, a pretty lower socioeconomic area, and wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. Tell you the truth, I just very naive. I did pretty good in school, and I was a good athlete, but I wasn't sure what my options were just because of where I grew up. Um, and military wasn't on my radar in Los Angeles. It just wasn't really talked about that much. But anyway, up at 19 years old, I ended up going to a party that I was working at Chili's, the restaurant, and our bartender would throw parties every once in a while, house parties. And so we go down there, everybody, and it's usually just a very fun, kind of uh, electric atmosphere. But this one was just very strange. It was like 10 days before Christmas. I remember Christmas was really close, but everyone was just super quiet and whispering. And it's like, what's going on here? Like everyone's whispering, there's a guy over there he's his Navy SEAL. And I've never heard of SEAL teams at all. Never heard of a Navy SEAL at 19 years old. And again, had really no interest in the military. To me, I thought military was more for back then were people that needed that discipline and drive. There was no real big wars going on at the time. So it just wasn't, like I said, it wasn't on my radar. Anyway, so I asked like, oh, what is this SEAL thing? Like, I don't know, go ask him. So I did. I walked up to this guy at the party and he was sitting with the girl and I was like, hey, I heard you're a Navy SEAL. And he's like, yep. I said, so what do you do? I'll never forget. He said three things. He said, we jump out of planes, we dive, and we kill people. At 19 years old, I'm like, you get paid to do that. And he's like, yeah. So I said, how do I get that job? He said, go see your Navy recruiter. Very next day, go to the Navy recruiter. Like, hey, what's this Navy SEAL thing? He puts in a video. Four guys fast drove out of a helicopter on top of about a 7-story building. As they're going down each story, they're like shoot terrorists. And when they run out the bottom, they hit this clacker, the whole building blows up. And I was like, yep, I'm in. Like, let's do this. The recruiter's like, okay, hold on. Let me ask you a couple questions. And at that time, I was so naive. I didn't even know there was officer and enlisted. That's how naive I was about military. So he's like, "Okay, let me ask you a few questions." He's like, "Have you ever, shot a gun before?" I said, "No." "Have you ever dove before?" I said, "No." "Have you ever run more than a mile?" And I said, "No." And so he's like, "I don't think this is for you. I don't think you understand what this is." And he tried to talk me into other jobs, and I told him the only interest I have is in the SEAL program. So then he's like, "Okay, let me show you the list of jobs because now SEALs, we have our own rate. It's called special operators. So that is your designation within the military. Back then, this is in 95, December of 95. You had to have a rate, and then your SEAL qualification was like an extra on top of that, but you had to have a job with the Navy. I didn't know this. So when he's showing me all these jobs that one I have to pick, none of them say SEAL. So I told him, like, look, I already told you I don't want to do any of this stuff. There was stuff like gunner's mate, boatswain's mate, radar taxi, all this. And it's like, no, I'm not interested. He's like, look, as I said, told him, the only way I'm signing this contract is if you guarantee me I go from boot camp straight to buds, which is SEAL training. And he's like, if I let you do this, there's about 200 guys that go to each class and only 10% graduate. These are guys who have been working out for years and really training for this. And most 90% of them won't make it. He's like, you don't have a chance. But if I let you do this, you're gonna go from boot camp to buds. You're not gonna make it. Then you're gonna be the guy who's chipping paint on a ship for the next 4 years because you were not smart enough to take a job at the Navy. And I told him, I don't care. That's the only way I'm signing. So I signed that contract, boot camp to buds, and then he trying to help me out. He said, "Here's what we're gonna do. Say it's December, late December. We're gonna put you on delayed entry till March. We're gonna give you 3 months. I'm gonna create a workout program for you. That way, at least you're kind of ready for this in March." And I said, "Okay, that makes sense." Signed the contract. Everything's good to go. I go home. My parents find out that I joined the military to be a SEAL, and they freaked out, like absolutely lost it. My mom wanted me to stay in college. I was a freshman, stay in college. My dad wanted me to keep pursuing athletics, and I just let him know that that wasn't happening. So I mean, were super upset. I called the recruiter back that night, and I said, "Hey, I can't wait till March. I need to leave like soon. It's not it has I got one spot the night of Christmas if you want it." I said, "Done." So had zero prep, just went in all on mindset and left 10 days later, went from boot camp straight to SEAL training. And I mean, there's so many crazy, funny stories I could tell you, but that's the gist of it there. Obviously, physically, it was intensely tough. The mindset part, I, I think I had a pretty good mindset just from my background. So that part didn't bother me that much, but like just keeping up on the runs and swims and O courses and all those physical things in the beginning was very hard. So they have a thing called the Goon Squad. And that's where after you finish the evolution, if you're in the back half, you get like an extra half hour of just getting destroyed by the instructors, carrying each other up and down sand berms and getting wet, sandy just because you're in the back. I think fortunately for me, because I was so young, my body just caught up really quickly, got strong fast, and I was able to work my way up and do better with each phase moving forward. So that's how I got in. Turns out the craziest part of this story, the guy at that party that night, that the whole reason why I changed my life, my life had a whole different trajectory. Turns out he lied. He went to SEAL training and he quit. And I found that out after I got there. But the whole trajectory of my life changed from one night when a guy lied to me at a party.
That's wild. That's wild
Yeah,
that, like, a lie but it was the right lie that you needed to hear at
it
that time,
was.
man. So,
It was.
you
Yeah,
know?
divine intervention, right?
Yeah, right? I wanted to ask you this too, because one of the things too that after like 24 years as a Navy SEAL, what do you think people misunderstand most about elite performance? Especially the difference between looking tough and actually being strong under pressure. Because, like, I mean, I would love to say I'm strong under pressure, but man, I just cracked tonight trying to get my daughter's contacts in. Like, oh my goodness, I was like absolutely insane. But you see, like, we we're all good. Like, what was it? Was that Mike Tyson who said everyone's good till you get punched in the face, or everyone's got a plan till you get punched in the face? It's like it's really hard. You think you're gonna be able to handle it, but when something tough comes, a lot of people break. And what separates those things apart, man?
I think the biggest factor is the individual's mindset. What are they driven by? What is their ultimate goal for being there? For some, It's patriotism. For some, it's just wanting to fight the bad guys and be the sheepdogs that are taking care of the sheep when the wolves come. It really depends. For some, it's their faith, the belief in God and that higher purpose and knowing that they're serving at that level. So I think it really comes down to the individual. What are they driven by? How passionate are they about that? Because, like you said, when those things happen and things get difficult, you really have to dig into, what am I doing here? What's the reason? Why am I so driven to keep going? And that's the drive behind that. So, and it can be a different, or it could be a combination of all those factors. It could be family, patriotism, your belief in God, and all those things that put together that really drive you to have that will to make sure that you succeed at that level.
Yeah, I love that. Um, it's interesting too because I think that when people feel lost, sometimes they haven't figured out what that thing is for them. They haven't found that anchor point, and it's very much um because people will talk about finding direction, finding their path, but many still struggle with a lot of different things. They'll talk about confidence, but again, they still struggle with self-doubt or imposter syndrome or things like that. You know, in your experience, what actually builds real confidence and helps people find their path?
The biggest thing is you gotta just jump off that ledge and build that experience. The first time you do it, it's gonna be insanely tough. Like, of course, I was scared when I signed that contract to go to Buds. I put my chips all in, and everybody told me that I wasn't gonna make it. But the only way in going from day one being scared out of my mind and, like, just trying to stay alive and be in class the next day, to going building that repetition and figuring it out and then gaining that experience. That's where that confidence comes, because if you don't take that first step, you're never going to get there. And you can't wait till you feel comfortable to do it, because that time is never going to come. So you have to be able to be willing to get out of your comfort zone, take that initial risk and say, okay, I'm going to go for it. I'm got to have that drive. That's that mindset of, okay, I'm dedicating myself to this 100%. Does it always work out? No, it doesn't. But then there's always an opportunity to learn. And, failure happens to everybody in life. Nobody's perfect. But it's those, when you fail, do you learn from that? Do you better yourself? Do you train harder? Do you work harder to get to that next level and not give up? I think that's the main separator right there.
One of the things too that I find myself thinking about is the idea of never being ready and or waiting for the right time. I live part of the year and part of the part time in Southeast Asia, where my wife works and sings, and I have a company here, um, doing media and content. And one of the things that's interesting is if you ever travel to Vietnam, crossing the street is one of the most difficult things that you can do in Southeast Asia. Like, because traffic is nuts. The motorbikes are nuts. It's wild. And when I will sit there and I learned early on, there's a rule. You just go. Like there is literally never a perfect moment. There's just not. And I see so many people coming here, so many tourists coming, and they stand there and they judge it. They're looking at the light, they're looking at all of the factors, and I just pull over and I say, I'll somebody try to help people and be like, "You just gotta go." And like, "But they're," I said, "They'll get out of the way." Like, people will let you pass. You just put your hand up and go nice and slow, and you'll make it. But you gotta
Yeah.
believe that you'll make it, and you gotta take that step because, it can be daunting to take a step. It can be scary to take a step, and whatever that step might be for you. I remember when I first moved to a new country, it was really freaky. I didn't know a language. I didn't know anything. And the first day I learned my first word, and it was just like a whole new world. And slowly you get used to it, but there's never a perfect moment in life, and I think that's one of the things I have to remind myself is to just start, because, we all when I started my podcast, like, I didn't know how to do this, but I knew how to talk to people, and I think that talking to people gave me a lot of confidence, so I just kinda ran with it. But I wanna ask you a question because you write a lot about clarity and chaos. When everything feels uncertain, What helps a leader cut through the noise and make the next right decision?
So to me, I kind of look at it as like this huge math problem. As you're solving it, you don't know exactly. You know what the end state you want. You want that successful end state. Things happen. There's second and third order effects to every decision we make, and to the outcome, what that affects moving forward. So you have to be able to adapt, look at the big picture, and then see where are we at now at this big picture. That's how I make my next decision. I know this is what I have in front of me. These are the factors that I need to get to the next point. Then once we get there, reassess. Okay, we're here now. What's the best decision to make? So it's really making those taking time to sit back, look at the big picture, assess, and then make a decision instead of never make just a decision because you will always be making informed decisions. Take in that information, assess the situation. What are the second and third order effects of the decision I'm about to make? What makes the most sense? All right, let's move. And then another thing I want to touch on, Sean, that you said
Please
is,
do.
when you first take that big step, everyone's kind of nervous about taking that first step, but what people don't realize, and then when you said that, when you just talking about you saying your first word, and that opens up a whole that aperture of that scary thing that was looked like this. Now it gets a little bit light, more bright, and more things open up. And that's so true when you do decide to take that path. So like for me, when I decided to take that path into to Spud, seal, once I made it, my life opened up to so many other things that, that got less and less scary. And it just, my life exponentially grew in that. And then even with starting the company, starting this company was a scary thing. I'd done it for other companies before, but once I did it and it was scary but now my aperture's opened up to I'm meeting so many people, like, so I would never have met you if I didn't start this company. I've done, other podcasts with that I
Right.
never would have met those people without doing it, and it's rewarding. So what I want people to understand is, yes, it's scary, but know that once you do it, you're gonna get through it, and you're at that life aperture is gonna open up, and it's just gonna make things brighter and open you up to so many more opportunities, and it's an opportunity for growth, really. That's the main thing is that life is all about growing and getting better. It's not about perfection because none of us are ready to get it, but it's about really being able to grow and hopefully maybe provide some evidence and inspiration for others to take that path. I think is really what I was trying to hit on.
I love that because at the end of the day, it is about growth, and it's about inspiring the people around you to grow as well. Because I think one of the things that I see going on that happens a lot is that, we deal with inertia. I think inertia is one of the most dangerous things in a person's life. That, that stuckness, and for me, I love the Atomic Habits, and I find it for myself, like, when I got something challenging, I don't know if you can see it here, I got, some stitches here. I had little skin color change, and I went and it was like, "Well, what should I do? Do I need to," and I just kept thinking about it, thinking about it, thinking about it, and then finally, I was like, "You know what? I'm just gonna look online for one place that I can get a health check," and I found 3. And then I was like, "Alright, I'm gonna go drive with my daughter to her school, and I know that Skin Hospital's right up the street. Let's just drive there. Just drive there." I didn't know what I was gonna do. Let's just drive there. I got there, I looked around, I was like, "Okay, this doesn't seem too intimidating. What's the next thing I could do? Let's park my bike." Park my bike. I said, "Let's walk up and ask if they have anyone who speaks English." Walked up, "Do you guys have anyone who speaks English?" "Yes, we do." "Alright, where can I book an appointment?" I go up there. I just kept going to the next step, the next step, the next step, and then finally, 5 hours later, I had a biopsy done. I was sent home, and I'm recovering, and, like, it's scary. It's scary to do new things. It's scary to lean in on things. It's scary to ask questions, but, the reality is it's a lot more scary sitting around not knowing. It's a lot more scary to sit there stuck at a job that you hate. A lot more scary to sit there stuck in a bad financial situation. If you can just say, "Hey, let's see what the next step is," It's scary to go to the gym. Well, what's a lot more scary than that? Heart disease at 55,
Yeah.
That's really freaking scary, So maybe going to the gym for that first time is a scary thing that you can work your way through. And I promise you, if you go there and you talk to the people around you and you find the right gym, I think that's really important too. We got to find the right circles that we're surrounding ourselves with. You know, you go to the right gym, you'll find the people and they'll be like, "I go to my gym now, and I don't know this one guy's name, but every day we go together and he's like, 'Hey,' and I'm like, 'Hey,' and it's like, we got that community there, you know? And so I think that, if you can start showing up, it makes a huge difference, but you gotta take that chance. For one of the things last year is I was always the no guy. Like, I'd always find a reason to say no. Play it safe, play this and that. But last year, I was watching the movie Yes Man with my daughter, a Jim Carrey movie, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna try being the yes man. And so I started doing that, and it was life changing. It was absolutely
That's
life
awesome.
changing for me because it was this new way of looking at things. I said yes, and then I was like, but I don't even know what to do. So I would like break it down into steps, and it was huge. But like I had to trust. I had to trust that I was able to do it. I had to trust that I could find out the answers. I had to trust the people around me. And this is one of the things I wanted to ask you because I was reading a lot of what you put out there. Trust is a big theme in your work. What are the fastest ways leaders lose trust, and what are the real habits that build it over time?
I would say the biggest way to lose trust is when you're not fully invested, when you take leadership as a managerial experience rather than mentorship. A leader to me, you as a leader, I'm the first to lift and the last to sit down. I don't ask anything of my team that I'm not willing to do, and I'm always the first to do it, and I'm the last, I'm making sure that they're taken care of. So I think leading by example and providing a culture of inspiration. So really, I want any team that I lead to have a really unique culture that's custom to that individual team. But that creates that buy-in, where everyone it becomes more like a family than a work position, to where we're taking care of each other. To where if I'm running multiple pillars, if I have a team that's made up of 6, 7 pillars. Once one pillar's done, they don't just leave. They come to the team like, "Hey guys, we're done with that. Where can we help?" Building that type of culture is really what I think takes leadership to the next level. And me as a leader working in the SEAL teams, I've also led cross-functional teams where it was made up of 60 to 70 team members, both men and women, and just a small group of us were SEALs, so for 5 to 6 of us. But we needed all these other different pillars to be successful. And what I really did is create that buy. To me, I made sure that, hey, there's no us and them. To the SEALs, I said that there's no us and them, and to all the enablers, so I said there's no us and you, but we are one cohesive team. I told them that when I first took over the team, I kind of brought everyone together. And I said, "There's two things that I can promise you as a leader. Number one, that I'm going to do everything I can to be perfect in serving you guys and doing the best for you. But the second thing is I can promise you I'm going to fail at that miserably, and I'm going to need each and every one of you to help me for us to be successful." And we just started off the team and had just such an amazing cohesion that it really was like a family. And there was no SEALs and techs. It was just all of us one. And we ended up having an incredible deployment and in a workup where we just really excelled past the other cross-functional teams just because of the cohesion we had. What wasn't necessarily that we were better than anybody else, but we just had such a cohesion to where we took care of each other, and every single pillar looked out for the other pillar, and everything was all about the full mission. So that was the game changer right there. And I forgot the second half. I forgot what the second part of the question. Sorry, I went kind of long winded on that one.
No,
But that's
no, it's
it still
awesome.
inspires me. That really inspires me, like taking that type of leadership role in leading teams in that way.
Well, it leads to another question too, because like one of the things as a leader, and I love the book Extreme Ownership, one of my favorites. And like sometimes things we had a problem with my team the other week, and we dropped some ball was dropped. And one of my workers was like, "I'm so sorry." I was like, "No, at the end of the day, this is my team. And if we make a mistake, it's on me, man." Like, and like at the end of the day, I think to have to look at how you can break it down, how you can see how to make things happen, you know what I mean? But one of the things too is like you talk about ownership, extreme ownership, and how do you help people take responsibility without slipping into shame or burnout or beating themselves up?
About empowering them, recognizing who are your leaders and allowing them to have that responsibility, take on that. responsibility, own it, and let them set, but it has to be done clearly, right? It is just not thrown out there. So it has to be clear expectations. Let them know that you're there to support them. But the other big part of that, what I've really seen kind of help those others open up to their next leadership role and me mentoring them is when there is some type of accolades, when we've been successful, really making sure that you disseminate those accolades to the team and do it publicly. So, like again, when I was running cross-functional teams, we would do something extremely well because I was the leader. They would, Holland did an amazing job, and then in front, like, I'd make sure that I would recognize those team members that did exceptional jobs. So not only did the whole team understand these are my top performers, but now their leadership within their specific pillars are know that these individuals are being recognized for superior performance, for outstanding leadership, for, really
Mhm.
just taking the ball and running, take it to the next level and let them know that we can't be successful without them. And I think that's huge. And disseminating those type of accolades and really recognizing leaders and helping them, that really creates that buy-in and that inspiration that helps them understand that they're part of something special.
Yeah. I love that, man. And, one of the things too is, like, you have a diverse group of people that you're sitting in front of, you know? And everyone has different styles of communication, and everyone on your team is gonna have a different way of being engaged with optimally, you know? But one of the things that I was reading that you had said, and this sound is it resonates with me, it's like you've said that energy is the elite leader's edge, you know? And how should driven professionals think about managing energy, not just time, especially when they're carrying a lot, and as a leader, how do you find a way to connect to these different types of people using that energy without losing it all, you know?
And that takes a lot of that's not something that happens on day one. You really have to understand each individual in your team, and understand where their energy levels are because you don't want to burn them out either. As a leader, you're leading by example. And again, I'm intimately involved in everything, but I'm definitely not micromanaging. I'm allowing them to come to me, but it's setting clear standards of here's the expectation, and then rewarding them as they meet those expectations and letting them know, hey, you're doing an amazing job. But it's the energy, you also have to know when to take that break, right? You can't just keep going at full speed 'cause even if you don't burn out, you're not gonna make optimum decisions when you're tired. So it's recognizing, okay, it's time to take that inner break, that mental break, or that physical break. Let's kind of step back, reset, and then go back into it. And then it always helps to look at a fresh pair of eyes. But you also have to be able to do that for the team because sometimes the team, that specific pillar, might be working really hard because they want to, press the leader. And as a leader, sometimes it's say, hey guys, you guys are doing great. Let's take a break. Recognize that, hey, because I don't want to burn them out either, and I don't want to have them think that there's an over expectation. Like, I want success, but I don't want it at the expense of my team. I want them to feel good about it. So it's really, again, taking a step back, looking at the big picture. Where are my teams at as far as energy levels? Where are their motivations? What are they accomplishing? What's, if anything is slipping through the cracks, let's identify those in a positive way, recognizing everything that's going well, and then restating clarity of, okay, here's where we need to be. Everyone understood. Check. Let's move forward.
I get hung up in one spot. As I try to go, I make plans, I evaluate, like, one of the things that I have a really hard time with, and I don't know if you've seen other people that have a hard time with this as well, I start beating myself up. I get into this mental space where I'm like, "All right, I'm doing well, I've got something going on," but then when I make a mistake, it's really hard not to, like, to anchor in on that, and, it can kinda pull me off, and I can get really out of my flow state, out of my zone, but, like, I wanna ask you because, um, what did failure teach you in the SEAL teams that still shapes how you coach leaders and founders and athletes today, and how do you help people deal with their own failure and overcome it, you know?
Yeah, so like we both recognize, failure is an opportunity. It really is an opportunity to overcome adversity. That's the way I look at it. Because whatever you failed at obviously wasn't easy. It's something that you strive for and maybe fell a little bit short. But again, it's that opportunity to address that adversity and say, hey, what came of this? Why did I fall short? Let's make some adjustments and move forward. So use that as inspiration. And really, that's the biggest thing I think is having that inspiration to not give up. Because like you said, it's easy sometimes to get down there. Something happens to everybody. I've been down on myself and have to like, okay, refocus. What's the big picture? Can I get there? Of course I can. But I got to get back up. I got to pull my boots up and get back in the game because if keep sitting here feeling sorry for myself, I'm not getting there. So, and then again, why am I doing this? It's not just for me. It's for a bigger picture. I don't want to let these other people down, and then really start dialing that back up. What were those lessons learned? What were the second and third order effects of that failure? What are my next intentions moving forward? What are the second, third order effects of those decisions? Okay, now I can make an informed decision. This is the best path forward. This is how I'm going to get there and learn something from that. And really, that's what I would try to hope to uh, teach the teams that I lead, the individuals that I lead. It's just showing them, use it as an opportunity to address that adversity, to grow and reach for that next rung on the ladder, but do it smartly. Not just, hey, I got knocked down, I'm gonna jump back up, get the night. That doesn't help anybody. Make informed decisions. Know that you're going in the right direction. Take that step back, assess, and then move forward smartly.
Yeah. One of the things too that I kind of lean in on is the idea of iterating. Like, I might not be there yet, but, if I can level up one step at a time, like the idea of, you can't do a pull-up today. That's not fun, kinda sucks. Well, if you start working at it, and then maybe you're able to pull off 1, and then the next time you do 2, and then the next time you get 2.5, next time you get 3. If you could just start keep leveling up step by step, you'd be amazed at the progress that you can accomplish just by staying consistent. And I wanna ask this as well because this question comes up a lot, and I wanna like, the inertia going back to the inertia, like, for someone listening right now who feels stuck or hesitant or a little too comfortable, what is one hard truth they need to hear, or one step they can take today to start becoming more elite in how they lead their life?
Again, to me, it's the big picture. What is that ultimate goal? And knowing that you're making those incremental steps, and then also knowing that everyone, how fast does time fly by? It's incredible that how fast time flies. Because you think of, okay, it's going to take me a year to do 20 pull-ups, and you haven't done your first one, but you start that one. That year seems like a long time in the beginning, but next thing we're in April and now you're doing 4 pull-ups, and it just goes by so
Yep.
fast. But knowing savor those victories. Don't look at it as like, hey, I got to get to 20. Say, I got to get to one. Then once you get to one, you've accomplished that. That's a
Yep.
little bit of your motivation. Okay, what's my next target? Two. All right, maybe you get to two a little bit faster than you got to one because you're starting to build that. And then, like I said, next thing you know, that year has gone by so fast. Maybe you're doing 24 pull-ups because you stay dedicated. You celebrate each of those and acknowledge each one of those victories as, hey, I just took down another wall. And built some more inspiration. And next thing you know, instead of hitting 20, you're at 24. And now you feel great. Where you were a year ago, you were like really down in the dumps. Now you're super motivated because you didn't give up and you saw that big picture and realize that time flies. Time before you know it, it's really taking advantage
Yeah.
of opportunity. Time is an opportunity. Take advantage of it.
Yeah. Time is an opportunity, and you have to take advantage of it because it's one of the greatest things we have is the ability to kinda lean in and hammer away on something. But, if you're not willing to work at it, if you're not certain about what you can accomplish, um, and that certainty might not be when I I love thinking back to the sailors of old. Like, think about the mariners that would set out across oceans that they had no idea what was on the other side. They just were like, whether it be the ancient Vikings, dude, Vikings that were in a rowboat, a giant rowboat crossing the North Atlantic, like, dude, and we know that they reached North America. That's insane to think about that. But they weren't like, "Yeah, we're gonna row across the ocean." They're like, "Let's see where we can get to." They had provisions, they had, like, things with them, they had things to help them navigate, and they struck out, and their ability to navigate was, second to none, and they just used those tools, and they used the idea of, "Let's start out on this journey," and then you end up maybe in a different place than you anticipated. But if you can be going on that direction and you have that North Star, and whatever that North Star is for you, I'll tell you what it is for me. My North Star, hands down, is my daughter. And the belief that I can make this world a little bit of a better place, um, I is something that motivates me, and it drives me forward, you know? I had a really long day yesterday, and I dove into stuff today, and someone was asking me, "Hey, Sean, how do you keep going?" And I was like, "Because I have to, because I believe, that I have the ability to help make a change, and that to me is second to none." So, I think that whatever it is that's your North Star, you gotta lean in on that. I mean, first of all, you gotta figure out what that is, you know?
100%, and you gotta be willing to be a game changer, everyone can just go
Yeah.
along and do the regular things in life and just be another cog in the wheel, but when you step out and want you have that desire to be a game changer, you face that fear of getting out there and just going for it, and like you said, it might not be an easy journey, but you're always gonna be happy at the end of it, just knowing that to me, one of the biggest fears is, what if I was 51 like I am now and look back like, I wonder what would happen if I would have tried. If I never did, if I was scared, I look back like, I wonder if I could have done it. That would be the scariest thing for me. So I would rather go and give everything fail than to wonder, could I have done it? But making it, it's like, again, just opening up to an incredible journey that I couldn't expect it otherwise. Over operating in over 36 countries, 4 different continents, all over the world. It has made an amazing experience, amazing deployments, made a huge difference in the world that we live in today, and, I'm just so grateful that I was able the opportunity to take that chance and to make the most of it, you know, just very, very blessed for sure.
That's awesome. Where can people find out more about you and what you do?
So 2 ways really, my LinkedIn profile, shares quite a bit about what I do and my past, and my history goes back to my military, uh, service and deployments, and so you get a little bit, background information there. And then also my website, is Legacy Forged Mindset, and the actual website is lfmindset.com, and you'll learn a bit about me there, and a little bit about my background, what I do, what my goals are, intentions are for helping leaders.